The patient had 4 minutes. The surgeon had just hit the floor, unconscious. Nurses froze. The anesthesiologist screamed for help, and the man holding the mop in the corner calmly set it down, walked to the table, and picked up the scalpel like he'd never stopped using one. Welcome to Hill's Stories. Before we begin this story of silence, skill, and a past that refused to stay buried, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. His name on the badge read Ray. No last name, just Ray, maintenance staff. He arrived every morning at 4:45 a.m., before the first shift change, before the fluorescent lights fully warmed up in the emergency wing. He wore the same gray coveralls, the same scuffed boots, and carried the same yellow mop bucket with wheels that squeaked on the polished tile. He never spoke unless spoken to. Even then, his answers were short. Morning. Copy. All set. The hospital was massive. 6 floors, 3 wings, over 300 beds. But Ray only worked one area. The surgical wing, 4th floor, east corridor. Same route every single day for the past 11 years. He mopped the pre-op hallways, wiped down the railings outside the operating rooms, restocked the blue paper gowns in the supply closet, emptied the biohazard bins with a precision that most of the nurses didn't even notice. But a few did. One of the older OR nurses, a woman named Diane, who had been there for 28 years, once told a colleague, "That man moves like someone who's seen the inside of an operating room before." Her coworker laughed. "He's a janitor, Diane." "I know," she said quietly, "but watch his hands." Ray's hands were different, steady, controlled. The way he gripped the mop handle wasn't loose or careless. It was firm, deliberate, like someone trained to hold instruments under pressure. When he restocked supplies, he didn't just throw boxes on shelves. He rotated them older stock forward, newer stock back, FIFO, first in, first out, the kind of habit you don't pick up cleaning hallways. And when he passed the OR windows, the small rectangular glass panes that let staff peek inside during procedures, he never looked away. He looked in, not with curiosity, but with recognition. Still, no one asked. Hospitals are full of people with pasts. Some came to heal, some came to hide. Ray seemed like the latter. The younger residents joked about him sometimes. "Bet he's seen some crazy stuff." "Yeah, crazy messes." But the attending physicians didn't joke. They nodded when he passed. A few even said, "Good morning, Ray," with a tone that sounded more like respect than courtesy. One surgeon, Dr. Ellison, head of trauma surgery, once stopped mid-conversation when Ray walked by. He stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head and went back to his notes. Later, a nurse asked him, "Do you know him?" Ellison hesitated. "No, but I feel like I should." Ray kept his head down. He kept his routine. He never ate in the cafeteria, never sat in the break room, never attended the staff appreciation events. He was a ghost in gray coveralls, invisible by choice, until the night everything changed. It was a Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. The ER had been slammed since 8 p.m. A multi-car pileup on the Interstate 6 patients. 2 critical. One of them, a 34-year-old woman named Sarah Hastings, was rushed into OR 3 with internal bleeding, ruptured spleen, liver laceration. She was losing blood faster than they could replace it. Dr. Marcus Hale, a skilled surgeon with 12 years of experience, scrubbed in 2 nurses flanked the table. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Patel, monitored vitals from the head of the bed. Ray was in the hallway. He had just finished mopping near the staff elevator when he heard the commotion. Rolling gurneys, shouting voices, the controlled chaos of a code blue. He moved to the side, out of the way, and watched through the small window of OR 3. Inside, the surgery had begun. Dr. Hale worked quickly, hands precise. Clamps, suction, retractors. The team moved like a machine. But at 12:03 a.m., something went wrong. Dr. Hale suddenly stopped. His hand wavered. He blinked rapidly, shook his head. "Marcus?" one of the nurses said. He didn't respond. His face went pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead under the surgical cap. "Marcus, are you okay?" He stumbled backward. His legs buckled. He collapsed. The room erupted. "Dr. Hale is down." Someone call for help! We need another surgeon now! Dr. Patel hit the intercom. Code Blue OR3. We need immediate backup. Patient is open, active bleed, no attending. But it was after midnight. The on-call surgeon was 15 minutes away. The backup was in another surgery 2 floors down. Sarah Hastings had 4 minutes, maybe less. The nurses stood frozen, hands hovering over instruments they were trained to assist with, not use alone. That's when the door opened. Ray stepped inside. No one stopped him. They didn't have time to think. He walked calmly to the scrub sink, turned on the water, and began washing his hands. Not like a janitor, like a surgeon, soap, forearms, fingernails. 30 seconds, methodical. One of the nurses finally spoke. Sir, you can't. Glove me, Ray said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight, command. The nurse hesitated, then grabbed a pair of size 8 gloves. Ray slid them on without looking down muscle memory. He approached the table. The anesthesiologist stared at him. Who are you? Ray didn't answer. He looked at the monitor. Heart rate dropping, BP critical. Blood pooling in the abdominal cavity. He picked up the retractor. Suction, he said calmly. The nurse obeyed. Ray's hands moved with a precision that silenced the room. He identified the bleeder in seconds, a torn branch of the splenic artery. He clamped it, tied it off, checked for secondary bleeders. His movements were smooth, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Irrigation. The nurse handed him the syringe. He flushed the cavity, checked the liver lac, placed a hemostatic pad. Vitals stabilizing, Dr. Patel whispered, almost in disbelief. Ray worked for another 6 minutes, closed the spleen, checked the bowel, ensured no missed injuries. Then he stepped back. She's stable. Close her up. He stripped off the gloves, walked to the sink, and washed his hands again. By the time he turned around, the backup surgeon had arrived, rushing through the door in a panic. What happened? Where's Hale? The nurse pointed to the floor, where Dr. Hale was being tended to by a resident. Then she pointed to the table. She's stable. He saved her. The surgeon looked confused. Who? But Ray was already gone. The surgical wing was silent in a way it had never been before. Dr. Hale had been taken to the ER for evaluation. Severe dehydration and a blood sugar crash. He'd be fine. But the woman on the table, Sarah Hastings, was alive because of someone who wasn't supposed to know how to save her. The backup surgeon, Dr. Brennan, stood over the patient and examined the work. The clamps were placed perfectly. The sutures were textbook. The hemostasis was flawless. Whoever did this, he said slowly, has done it 1,000 times. One of the nurses spoke up. It was Ray. Who? The janitor. Brennan looked at her like she'd lost her mind. The janitor did a splenic artery repair? She nodded. I watched him. He didn't hesitate. He knew exactly what to do. Dr. Patel, still at the head of the table, added quietly, I've been an anesthesiologist for 16 years. I know what a trained surgeon looks like. That man was trained. Brennan didn't respond. He just stared at the doorway where Ray had disappeared by 2 a.m. Word had spread through the night shift. Whispers in the break room. Texts between residents. A janitor had performed emergency surgery and the patient was stable. Hospital administration was notified by morning. The chief of surgery, Dr. Raymond Booker, arrived at 7 a.m. and went straight to the security office. Pull the OR3 footage from last night. All of it. They did. The video showed everything. Ray entering, Ray scrubbing, Ray operating with the calm control of someone who had lived in that environment before Booker watched it 3 times. Then he closed the laptop and said one thing. Find him. But Ray hadn't clocked in that morning. His locker was empty. His mop bucket sat unused in the storage closet. He was gone. Diane, the veteran OR nurse, was the one who finally said what everyone was thinking. I told you, that man wasn't just a janitor. One of the younger nurses pulled up the employee database. Ray's file was sparse. No emergency contact, no previous employer listed. Just a P.O. box address and a hiring date from 11 years ago. But there was one thing, a scanned copy of his application. At the bottom under previous experience, someone had written in pen, prefer not to disclose. That afternoon, Dr. Booker made a call to an old colleague at Johns Hopkins, a man who specialized in tracking physician credentials and licensing histories. I need you to run a name for me. First name Ray, possibly worked in trauma or general surgery, likely left the field over a decade ago. 2 hours later, he got a call back. I found something, but you're not going to believe it. His real name was Dr. Raymond Castellano, not Ray the janitor. Dr. Raymond Castellano, board-certified trauma surgeon, former chief resident at Columbia Presbyterian, graduate of Yale School of Medicine. From 1989 to 2012, he had been one of the most respected trauma surgeons on the East Coast. Over 4,000 successful surgeries, published research, awards, a career most doctors only dreamed of. Until March 18, 2012. That was the day his daughter died. She was 16. Emma Castellano, killed in a head-on collision on Forsyth 95. She was DOA at the same hospital where her father worked. He wasn't on shift, but when he got the call, he ran into the ER still wearing his surgical scrubs from a previous case. They wouldn't let him in the room. Protocol family members can't treat family members. He tried anyway. He pushed past two nurses, broke through the door, and saw her on the table. Gone. They said she died instantly, that there was nothing anyone could have done, but he didn't believe that. He couldn't. For 6 months, he kept working, but something inside him had shattered. He started missing surgeries, drinking alone in his office, staring at patient files without seeing them. One day, he walked into the chief's office and resigned. No explanation, no forwarding address. He disappeared, and for 11 years, no one knew where he went until now. Dr. Booker sat in his office, staring at the file on his desk. Photos of Castellano from his residency, articles about his groundbreaking work in trauma care, and then nothing, a void where a man used to be. He picked up the phone and called the HR department. The janitor, Ray, I need his home address now. They hesitated. Sir, he's a contract worker. We don't have much. I don't care. Find it. An hour later, Booker was driving across town to a small apartment complex on the south side 3rd floor. Unit 12. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened. Ray stood there in a plain white t-shirt and jeans. He looked older in the daylight, tired, but his eyes were still sharp. Booker didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, looking at the man he'd only seen in decade-old photographs. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Castellano. Ray didn't react. He just stepped aside and let him in. The apartment was almost empty. A couch, a small table, no TV, no pictures on the walls. But in the corner, on a single shelf, sat a framed photo of a teenage girl, smiling, bright eyes, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Booker looked at it, then back at Ray. You saved a woman's life last night. Ray sat down slowly on the couch. She had 4 minutes. Someone had to. You're not licensed anymore. I know. You could be arrested, sued, lose everything. Ray looked up at him. I already lost everything. Silence. Booker sat down across from him. Why did you come back? Why work in a hospital if it hurt this much? Ray stared at the floor for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I couldn't save her. But maybe I could save someone else's daughter. The weight of those words filled the room. Booker looked at the photo again. Emma, 16 years old, gone. He stood up slowly and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. The hospital board is meeting tomorrow. They're going to want answers. I can't promise what will happen. Ray nodded. I understand. Booker hesitated. For what it's worth, what you did last night, that was the best trauma repair I've seen in 20 years. Ray didn't respond. Booker left. The next morning, the hospital board convened in the executive conference room, 10 members, Dr. Booker at the head of the table. The question was simple. What do we do about Raymond Castellano? Some argued for immediate termination liability, legal exposure, unlicensed practice. Others argued for leniency. He saved a life. He acted in an emergency. No one else was available. But one board member, an older woman named Dr. Evelyn Cross, said something that silenced the room. This man spent 23 years saving lives. Then he lost the one life he couldn't save. And instead of walking away forever, he came back. Not for glory, not for money. He came back to mop floors and restock gowns in the place that took everything from him. That's not liability. That's penance. She paused. And last night, when no one else could act, he did. Without hesitation, without recognition, he saved Sarah Hastings, a mother of two. And then he walked away. Again. The room was silent. Dr. Booker leaned forward. The question isn't whether he broke protocol, he did. The question is whether we're the kind of institution that punishes a man for doing what we're all supposed to do. Save lives. A vote was called 7-3. Dr. Raymond Castellano would not be charged, but his employment as a janitor was terminated. Instead, the hospital offered him something else. 3 weeks later, Sarah Hastings was discharged from the hospital. Full recovery. Before she left, she asked to meet the surgeon who saved her life. They told her his name, Dr. Raymond Castellano. She asked where he was. They said he no longer worked there. So she found him herself. She knocked on the door of Unit 12. Ray answered, surprised. Dr. Castellano? He nodded slowly. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I have 2 daughters, 6 and 9. They still have a mother because of you. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from her girl's drawings. Thank you notes. Ray stared at them for a long time. Then for the first time in years, he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, quiet one. The kind that says maybe, just maybe, the weight is a little lighter now. 2 months later, Dr. Raymond Castellano walked into the hospital again. But this time he wasn't wearing gray coveralls. He was wearing scrubs. The hospital board had voted to sponsor his reinstatement. Full license, supervised practice for 6 months. Then back to full surgical duty. He didn't return to trauma. He chose general surgery. Slower, steadier, but still saving lives. And every morning before his shift, he stopped by the 4th floor hallway, the same one he used to mop. He'd stand there for a moment, silent, remembering. Then he'd walk into the OR and do what he was always meant to do, because some men don't need recognition. They don't need titles or applause. They just need to know that somewhere, someone's daughter gets to go home. Ray never spoke about that night. He never gave interviews, never appeared on the news. He just showed up, day after day, saving lives, one surgery at a time. And in the corner of his locker, tucked behind his surgical mask, was a small photo Emma, smiling. Forever 16. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Dr. Castellano? Someone who carried a grief so heavy it could have destroyed them. But instead, they turned it into purpose? Share their story in the comments. Say their name. Let the world know who they were and who they still are. Because here at Hill Stories, we believe the most powerful stories aren't about people who never fell. They're about people who got back up, quietly, without fanfare, and kept going. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it. Help us honor the ones who save lives in silence. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, if you ever see someone mopping a hospital floor at 4 a.m., look closer. You might be standing next to a hero who just needs one more chance to save a life.